good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering current events on this year, Thursday, Rise and Shine, and Give God the Glory. And today we're looking at the topic, Witness to Those in a War Zone, but Do Not Live in It. Welcome again. Thanks for joining me. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you again, dear Lord, for your word. And I thank you, dear Lord, for the way that you continue to bless and guide. I pray to may be with myself and those listening, that we may walk in the light of thy countenance and counsel. For Christ's sake, amen. So looking at this topic today, which is witness to those in a war zone, but do not live in it. So we are counseled that when we see an environment develop around us, or as an environment is already existing, that we try to put ourselves in the best situation that we possibly can. And because in this life, so to speak, nothing is guaranteed, we work by what we call probabilities, or we increase our chances of success. And one of the things that we do for chance of success is that we place ourselves in an environment that will give us the best results. And so our main text has been in 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 14 onwards. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14 onwards to 18. And it says here, "Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness?" So one would say, if the fact of life is that in life that we live in amongst people who does not serve the Lord, so to speak, in the sense that they don't serve the Lord, they don't believe in the Lord or the principles of the Lord. Why would one want to put oneself in the best possible scenario or situation? Because this world is filled with sinners. And that might be true to a certain degree, but where I'm going to go with this is I want to show you is that there is always life where they always have, where you have trade-offs, right? And you have to look at your trade-off and say, is this worth it? So when we talk about where we live physically, where we lay our bed, our home, we have to look at it and say we want to put ourselves in the best possible scenario or situation that we can be in. As I say, you might be able to go to somewhere and it might be very cheap to live, but it's very expensive in other ways. So this is what I want to talk to you about. So it's not that we in this world and you ever find utopia. I don't believe in utopia. I believe that in this world, there's trouble in this world. But we study to try to figure out how best to live, how to get the best possible outcomes in a world of sin. This is why we eat a certain way. This is why we learn certain principles. This is why everybody have to put in their 40 hours of work. But you want to be able to put yourself in the best situation where you can get the best value out of your each day labor. So we put ourselves in the best situation. And if you do life like this in multiple different areas, what you find, you can live a very good life in spite of all the sin and craziness. So when it says now in this life, it says, he's talking to sinners in Corinthians, and he says, don't be unequally yoked up with unbelievers. What light and darkness have to do with each other, what righteousness and unrighteousness. He's dealing in the real, he's dealing in the real world. And he's saying still in this environment, you can be in an environment where you could be laying on your bed and get shot by stray bullets because there's people always shooting people. But if you live in this life, you're always at risk of being shot, right? Or being, if you were living in his time, probably get hit with a bow and an arrow. But there's some environments that your risk are increased. You have a very the curve or the line going up is very well increased. So you don't want to be in that environment where your risk of dying from stray bullets have gone up. So that's why I say, and when I say war zones, I'm not talking about like a literal war zone. If there's a war zone, you need to get out before the war gets out of control or come to your door. But if you live in an environment, so to speak, that is a known war zone, that means every day the environment is basically dripping with war. I wouldn't encourage somebody that's sensible to live in that zone, unless you're part of the protection, police, soldier, blah, blah. That's your job. But if that's not your day job, I don't think we should live in war zones. And that's my message there. I'm going to explain to me here. So I'm going to explain to you here out some Bible texts and stuff. And so hear me out, hear my reasoning and then do with it in your situation. 'Cause everybody's situation is different, but I would want to live in a zone. So unequally yoked, I'm gonna deal more now with this concept of come out of her. So here it goes. Notice here, and what concord at Christ with Belial, and what part at he that believeth with an infidel. So we live amongst infidels no matter where we live, right? So why would I say to not live in a certain zone? I'll get there. Just stick with me. Hear me out, as they say. And what agreement at the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God. As God had said, I will dwell in them, and will walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore, come out from among them, and be ye separate, say the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and I will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty. So everywhere we live, we run risk, as I say. But there are some areas that things, when the things get out of control, we have to move on. I remember years back I was reading Ellen G. White, and she made the statement that even if the church, say the pastor is pastoring church and the pastor is trying to do the right thing, and the church become too unruly and can't be brought into any type of working order, she said the pastor should throw over the church and move on. Just get rid of they can do what they do, but he's moving on because the message he's preaching and what he's doing is not working. So you could be in this environment that is just not working. So as I say, we all have, anywhere we live, the society, we will live amongst the society. But there's some areas that is not worth living, no matter how cheap it is, no matter how cheap the house is, no matter how cheap the rent is. If cheap is your only criteria for living somewhere, to choose where you live, then this is going to be a problem. Because the Lord said to come out from among her. And the first example I'm going to give, because I don't want to wait too fast. That's why I'm trying to go fast into this, because I don't want someone to, if I'm listening to, they hear what I say immediately and I lose them. And I'm more and more becoming concerned about losing people. Because I might start off, and most of the time I start off, I'm very slow with where I'm going because I'm assuming somebody's going to hang in there with me. So, but I'm not going to be slow here. Let me go straight to an example. The example is in Sodom. So in Luke chapter 17, verse 32, Christ says, remember Lot's wife. So there's not much Christ would have to say. You know the story. It's one of the most famous stories in the Bible. There's not very much stories in the Bible stories that are famous like this story. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is even known by people that are not really very biblical and read much Bible, but it's a very internationally or well-known story. Story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Some similar to a story of David and a story of Samson, and those stories are loom large in the Bible. Obviously, the biggest story in the Bible is the story of Jesus, but this is one of the big stories in the Bible. So what we notice now, the setup with Sodom and Gomorrah is that after Lot, which is the nephew, and he sometimes call him his brother, I think, or son, but it's his brother's son, his nephew. When Lot separates from Abraham, Abraham himself had confederates, people that he do business with, and he work with in the society, because we have to do that. You have to go to work. The people you work with, they don't have to serve God or not. You just work with them and you try to find the best companies to work with. So Abraham is living like that. But Abraham does not live in Sodom. Abraham live where he can see Sodom off in the distance. So that tells you right away the righteous man himself, the father of the faithful, which no matter how we slice it, some people could say, I don't believe in the Bible. Well, whether you believe in the Bible, Abraham is a fact of our modern life. When we think about the big three religions, Christianity, Muslim, and Catholicism, basically says the father of their religion is Abraham. So everybody accept Abraham, unless you're pagan. Everybody are infidel. Yeah, everybody says, okay, Abraham is the foundation. Okay, so we got that. Abraham is the father of the faithful. So this man here, Abraham, his story is important because his nephew went and lived towards Sodom. So he sort of lived, I guess, would be probably a suburb of Sodom. Sodom is synonymous for rapists and homosexuals and, and the funny people, LGBTQIA plus people. And he went and lived in Sodom. Somehow the story moves forward where he's now found himself in Sodom and things get rough. Sodom becomes attacked, including Gomorrah and other areas, satellites of Sodom get attacked by some kings and get taken captive. They get ambushed, taken captive. This is our current narrative in our current news today, so you can understand it. So he's in an environment where they're getting people getting taken captive. Now Abraham didn't get taken captive because Abraham has a household of over 1,000 people, and 400 and something of the men in his household were fighting men. Abraham goes now and rescue the Sodomites and the Gomorrites and the other towns that got taken captive and brought them back to Sodom. So the environment that he was living in was treacherous. I'm talking about Lot. So my message would be that when we find ourselves in that situation, we need to get out of her. Come out of her, my people. Be ye separate. This is my criteria. My criteria is not you can't leave the world. Everywhere we live in this world, any country you live, there's going to be bad people and bad situation. But you can find within a country or a whole country or a whole town is not livable if you're righteous and you're sensible. That's my message today. So hopefully you get me, and then I'll keep building on that going forward. So that's my point. So back to the story now. So when you're looking at the situation, you have to say, what is going on in Sodom? As I think it's Amos clarified for us, that Sodom was they ate a lot of food. There's a lot of idleness. They oppressed the poor, and those that are less fortunate, and they did weird things. They were kinky, and do all kind of strange sexual things. And ultimately, we know what happened. So Lot is in Sodom, in a war zone that's being taken, kidnapped. So this is our current events today, right now, going on for the last few weeks. And I would say, on both sides, you don't want to live in that type of environment. If you have to live in an environment where there are guard towers, and there's people in the guard towers, there are people on the guard tower, on the floor, guard towers on the floor, guard towers on elevated position, machine guns with remote sensors to be able to automatically go off. And that means it's like you live in a zoo. And the difference is who's in the zoo. Is it you in the cage, or the lions and the tigers and the hyenas are in the cage? Sometimes you don't know who's in the cage. But people believe that, say, if they're on, depends on what side of the cage they're in, they're not in a war zone. To me, that's a war zone. And so Lot is in a war zone. It's not just Lot is not just in an environment where there's as I said, the LGBTQIA plus people. That's the beginning of the story. He's being captured and taken, whatever. And when he got captured, it should be his signal that probably I should live away from this environment. I probably should try to live the way how Abraham lived, or Abraham, right? The father of the faithful. Just think about it. Abraham physical environment that he lives in. He's living amongst people that are some of the worst people on the planet at that time. The Bible tells us about the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites and all them people. Terrible. Bestiality, murder, rape, pillage, all kind of stuff. Crazy. That's how the Bible described them. But yet Abraham lived, and Abraham is secure. And Abraham finds confederates who he can deal with. Mamre, Eshcol, other people that he could deal with. So he's in a rough zone, but he's figured out how to live. And that's what you have to do with this life. Is anywhere we live in this world, it's going to be a rough zone. But why we study the Bible, why we study history? Because we're trying to figure out, like Abraham, how to maneuver and move around Egypt. Abraham himself, I think, is, for my clarity, is a child of, so to speak, lineage of Noah. He's really, I think, Iranian, interesting enough, or somewhere there. I don't think he's Syrian. I think he's Iranian, if you understand the background. I'm going to tell you something in a second to clarify what I'm saying. I've done study with it in the past, but I don't have photographic memory. So sometimes if you hear me talk, if I make some mistakes, it's because I don't have photographic memory. Sometimes it's there, and I have to go back and look at the information what I looked at in the past to get a very clear picture in my head in the moment. So anyhow, so he's over there somewhere in what we call the Middle East, the world. The people say, why is that the center of the world? Because that's where Garden of Eden was built. If you look at the Garden of Eden, it was somewhere in Egypt and somewhere along near Babylon, and it's in that environment. There's somehow the center of the world. The Bible said when the Lord rebuild the earth, he's going to put his kingdom back in that area. So we're not in the center of the world. They're in the center of the world. That's how I understand it, at least. So Abraham is in this environment where you have these big tribes and all these different kingdoms, and they're violent and stuff like that. But Abraham must figure out how to live. So what I'm saying to you, yes, we live in this world, and this world is not our own, but we have to figure out, this world is not our home, but we have to figure out how to live. how to move. So one of the things that I believe what we do is that we put ourselves in the best possible location for our success. And remember, we try to spend our money wisely when it comes on to our physical location. As I say to you here, that somebody will say, "What if I can't afford it?" Remember, the cheapest housing in this world that you can buy is a casket. A casket is the cheapest housing. That's the cheapest thing you can house your body in. All right. So there's some places it's not worth that cheap housing because that's a very cheap housing. You know, you could buy a house and it's 3 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 1 bedroom. You know, it's apartment, whatever. And you say, man, it's expensive. And I tell you, you can get a cheaper housing, which is a casket. You know, and they'll bury you and put you 6 foot under. Very cheap. The cost of it is real cheap. It's long term. You get a casket and they put you 6 foot under. Your housing will be permanent unless you resurrected at the coming of Jesus, and it will be long term, very long. So you want to buy what you can afford, but you don't want to buy a place where, as I say, it's the risk of you getting hit. I'm not talking about you did anything bad. Talking about the risk of you getting mugged, getting captured, getting kidnapped, getting shot by stray bullets, your kids getting mugged, is increased greatly if you have to go back to school, I'm telling you, and go make some so you can make more money so that you can buy a little better house in a little better area. Do it. Follow Abraham. Don't follow Lot. Lot end up having cattle and whatever. Next thing you know, he end up in the city, and like by the time he ended, think about it. Lot life is a terrible example of bad choices, because by the time he ends his life, he's in a cave with his 2 daughters. Talk about housing. His housing choices became very narrow. For me, I would have just say, you know what, I repent. I'm gonna go back and live with Abraham. We sought our difference, and the wife is gone anyhow. So this is our what we our how would I say this? This is what we have to deal with. So when the Bible said, "Come out from among her and be not separate," Lot at the time when they captured him and he got free, he should say, "You know what, I'm not living in this environment anymore." You hear the current events I'm talking about. When you're in an environment where it's a war zone, I would not, if I can, especially when there's peace, I'm fleeing, because war zones are what they are. They're made for people to get killed, bombed up, and blooded and bruised and get kidnapped and stuff like that on both sides. If you know the current events I'm talking about, don't think that, as I say, if you have to live, like I've been in areas where there was heavy police presence, and I'm like, that don't make me feel good. Like if the police look like they're ready for war, and it's all these armored vehicles and SWAT teams and stuff like that. Some people might say, "Oh, I feel great. I feel safe," and I'm like, that don't make me feel safe. That make me feel like we live in a war zone, and there's a lot of people live in war zones. So I'll tell you, if you listen to me, that you might can't move today. The interest rate is high, homes are high, they're historically high, but start saving and plan to. But I think you should, for your own safety, for the safety of your family, I think you should move out of war zones. I think war zones are terrible. As I say, we have to live in this world. We live in secular societies, secular countries. No matter how much people say a country is God's country, or all the type of crazy things that people say. At the end of the day, we all live in a world that there's a lot of LGBTQIA plus. There's a lot of criminals, thugs, gangbangers, mobsters. That would be the Italian version of the same thing, and all of that. There's a lot of scammers and Ponzi scheme people, and multi-level marketing. And we try our best to. Why I do what I do here? Because I'm trying to tell you my thinking and what I've understand, and share that with you, so that you can make a better choice of where you put your head, where you lay your head, where you lay the head of your family. And as I say, even if you can't get the place with the lowest crime rate, you want to be able to get the place that has a lower, it might not be the lowest, but at least it's a better situation. You always want to put yourself in the best situation you can afford and you can do, your job and all these things. So I'm just telling you. So in the news I read this morning that there's a shooting, mass shooting that just happened a week ago or so in Maine. And the guy that did the shooting, he had all kind of mental health problems, and he thought that the people at the bar and the bowling alley that he went to shoot, they're writing up that he thought that they were posting online conspiracy theories about him, that he's a pedophile. And because of that, he went and started killing the people there. That was what was going on in his head. So what am I saying? Maine is, they says in the whole state of Maine, I think with 1 point something million people, that they have probably for the whole the whole year, 22 murders. And this mass murder caused them now to have 18, just one shot. So almost double. They're almost going to double this year, almost. What they would have for a year. So for me, I hear that stats and I see that mass murder. I know that mass murders happen, and they're happening probably more frequent, but still, it's not something that is the highest that ever happened in Maine. And Maine is somewhere that doesn't have a lot of murder. So for me, even though that thing happened, I would still say if I was not a choice, I probably want to live somewhere like a Maine, right? Because I want to live somewhere where the probability is decrease of me dying by murder. That's just how I'm saying life. Now, are there sinners there? Sure. But I'm putting myself in the best possible situation for the best possible outcome. Same thing what we do with finance. If you can be in an area where you can afford to work and you can make money, then you want to put yourself in the best situation. I've known people that they believe in, say, country living, right? And they go so far out that their ability to make money is so greatly decreased that they can hardly take care of their bills. Because remember, wherever you live in any country, the price of gas, the price of flour, the price of soy, the price of whatever is going to be the same. If you go to buy lumber, you're paying the same price for lumber that everybody else is paying. No, you might have geographically different variations. But for the most part, what you're going to do, you're going to be paying lumber, 2x4 is going to cost about the same, a 2x4 across the country. There might be some varying difference, slightly here, slightly there. So you could be in an environment that you're choosing is very safe. As I say, I'm assuming Alaska is very safe, but I think only 700,000 people live there. So you're making trade-offs in this life. Not so much a wrong. To me, wrong is living in a war zone. That's just how I look at it. I'm not going to live in a war zone, right? Because what it is that what it is when you live in a war zone, that your probability of, even if you can make more money in a war zone, but the probability of getting shot is not important. It's just you got to get out of environments like that. And as I say, I've traveled just enough to see certain war zones. There's some war zones in New Jersey. There's some war zones in different places, different states I've gone to. Rural areas, city areas, I've been to various different war zones. And the chance of your children dying of drug overdose, getting shot is increased. So somebody, as I say, don't live in certain areas. I'm not saying that you must live in the richest area. I'm not saying you must live in a war zone. That's my point. So am I saying to live in the Hamptons? If you can afford it, but you don't really need to. But there's many areas that you're safer and you can have better access for work, so you can make some money. Because as I said, this world is not our home, and we're just passing through. But while we're passing through, like Abraham, you want to put yourself in the best situation that you're not getting marauded and getting run over by crazy people. That's basically what I'm saying. So that's first thing there. Lot's wife. So remember Lot's wives. Is this Lot's wife? And Lot himself get to a point that he couldn't live in a safer zone. But Abraham could, but Lot couldn't. And what was Lot experience? Terrible. So I'm telling you, don't. So let's drill down here a little bit more. So in Numbers 23, verse 9, for from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him, and lo, the people shall dwell alone, and shall not be reckoned among the nations. So as Christians, we're not supposed to be reckoned among the nations. Because remember, the thing is, come out from amongst her and touch not the unclean thing. But we can't come out from the world. We have to live in this world. But we're not supposed to be reckoned amongst the people. Why? Because our mindset is different from the regular person. You see, as I say, I've dealt with people that were Christians. I'm not even talking about secular people. I'm talking people who are Christians. And they live in environments that I'm thinking, why do they live there? Right? Because as I say, there's places, listen, I can reduce the cost of my monthly expense greatly quick because I can go to an area. Like somebody says, if you want to know where rent is cheap, You don't even need to go to reality.com, or you don't need to go to any of these things. I can go anywhere and know when the rent is cheap. And what the person was saying is that you need to go somewhere that you see shopping carts in residential neighborhood. That means that somebody took the shopping cart and pushed it all the way from the supermarket to their home. You need to see garbage litter the street. You need to see burnt down houses. You need to, at night, if you're there, you need to hear gunshots. People firing gun at night when people are supposed to be sleeping to go to work. Probably you see one or two winos and stuff like that. And you just could go, just drive through a neighborhood. You say, man, rent must be cheap over here, right? Because the housing value can't be that much. So we have to live in this world, but we have to be wise and say, nah, I'm in this world, and the Lord is saying to me, from a neighborhood point of view, don't touch that unclean thing. That to me is unclean. An environment like that, yeah, it's going to be cheap, but you get what you pay for, right? And I've known people that brought up their family in those areas, and all they're doing is just burying their kids young. Could your child get killed when they're young? Yeah. But is it greatly increase when you live in certain neighborhoods? Yeah. And you go to school, and the school is not a school place for education, but in those neighborhoods, a lot of the time, the school is there for the kids to fight. And after a while, you're hearing, oh man, my child is in emergency room, they got stabbed and stuff like that. We do for our family, and sometimes, as I say, if you have to do some overtime, if you have to go back to school, get in a career, do what you have to do. But do for your family. Whereas to me, it's like I would say, if somebody's going to eat meat, the Bible tells us eat the clean meat. All right. Is there a risk? Yeah. But the risk is greatly decreased. You have to live in this world, as I say, but you choose the zones that are better. Everywhere you go in this world, there's going to be trouble. But I'm going to tell you, I've been places where the trouble greatly increased. And I'm thinking, y'all need to get out of that place. So my topic again, witness to those in the war zone, but do not live in it. That doesn't mean that, no, we abandon the war zone. No. But notice Abraham went and rescued Lot. He didn't abandon them. He didn't abandon the Sodomites, but he wasn't living with them. There's two different things. I can witness, I can be a witness, but I want to be a witness in it, because I want to live to be able to witness tomorrow. But if I'm dead, well, my witness is silenced. So I don't want to do that. So the people shall dwell alone and shall not be reckoned. Doesn't mean that we're not living in a country and we're not counted. No. But as I say, I could live just about anywhere. I just know that depends on where I live, there's trade-offs, right? So I could live in Alaska per se, but I don't know if I can tolerate that level of cold. And I could live somewhere that is, I live somewhere that there's a lot of trees, but I don't know if I could live further where there's more trees, because I really like people. So for me, there's a certain point where I say, I can go so far and no further. Like when I moved in the area that I moved in, I wasn't concerned about the school district, as an example, where I'm talking to you from right now. But I'd research enough, and I say, oh, it's as a blue ribbon school district. So again, it's important the kids get good education. I believe it's cheaper to pay for the education of a child than to pay for prison. Because think about it. I can't remember how much they say. It's tens of thousands of dollars to keep one person in prison. Your taxes will never, unless you live in a very expensive neighborhood, your taxes will never be that expensive. It's very expensive to house prisoners. It costs less to send each child to school every year than it is to pay for prison. Which will you pay? I'll pay for education for children. Then I'll pay for prison. Prison is too expensive. We can't afford it. So it's cheaper to pay for schools. So an environment you live in that they pay, decent amount, a reasonable amount of money for education is part of it. But for me, one thing I learned when I read up before I moved to this area was that for the county, the murder rate is low. People still get murdered, but sometimes they go a whole year and nobody get murdered. So I'm saying, man, a whole county. And after I live here, I'm like, oh, I see. One of the things I used to be, when it's strange when I moved there at first, was that they would, I would notice at night, people wouldn't close their blinds. They'll leave the blinds open. Or the curtain, you just leave it open and you can see right into their living room. And I was like, that's strange. And then after I lived there are times when I just find myself at night or normally to do the morning program, I wake up early, especially in the wintertime, and I open my blinds while it's dark outside. And then after a while, I'm thinking about it and say, oh, I start becoming like the people that I live amongst. You just leave the blinds open because a lot of times you're not really, not nobody's out there. It's just probably the deers and the bears. So it makes sense. But at first I was finding it strange because you think at night people lock the blinds, lock the curtains. And well, most of the time there's nobody hardly outside anyhow, so nobody to look in. But you choose well. You're just basically saying, I'm in a world of sin. Nothing is perfect in this world. But how do I get the best outcome so I don't become a victim? Are we going to be victims one day? Yeah. But we want to decrease that chance and we want to push it off as far as possible. That's what it is. So for me, like just in case because I'm not dancing around the issue because it's not my primary point, but I say to you, like, what's going on over there, like in Israel and Gaza, I wouldn't want to live on either side of the fence. That's just my opinion. I would tell somebody, get out of that environment because there's two people fighting and they've been fighting for, I think, hundreds and thousands of years. They've just been fighting. I don't want to get in that fight. I would tell them to listen. On both sides of the fence, I'll say, man, leave. And the problem with this is that I've been around, worked for even Jewish people, literally, work in their homes, blah, blah. And I've noticed that when they come into an area, they try to do what they call they want a utopia, where it's all Jews in one area and everybody has to be out, and that's how they live. So for me, I kind of see their mindset because I guess, you want to be around your own. That's not the construct of the Bible. The Bible tells us that Babel started where God scattered the people. God don't want people to congeal, but that's what they do. And so I can see they want to fight to push everybody out so that they can have it all, so they can have their utopia. So for me, sometimes you can't fight that type of stuff. You just have to leave it. It's going to be a bloodbath. It's sad what's going on, but it's not going to get better because that's their mindset. They're constantly whatever. But as I say, we're not supposed to reckon amongst the people. We live in this world, but this world is not our own. So now I'm going to go to a thought that I want to share with you. That is the same thought, but it's an expanded thought. I'm going to go to some prophecy here. I'm going to show you something, how this works in prophecy, and why I kept on using Revelation chapter 18. You'll see why Revelation 18, come out of her, my people, becomes applicable to 2 Corinthians, or what am I reading there? For the 2 Corinthians 6 verse 16 and 17 primary. Notice now, thinking about 2 Corinthians, so I'll read it again. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 17. So, wherefore, come out from among them and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. So we're told that we're not supposed to live in war zones. So as Christians, we follow this. But notice here now, I'm going to show you now, one of the reasons why you don't want to live in war zones, because you don't want to live in an area that you can become surrounded and get cut off. Notice, Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoso read it, let him understand. So I'm going to extend this for you a little bit here. Let me show you what's going on in my understanding. So when you shall see the abomination of desolation. So in the Bible, there's a few things that's referred to as an abomination. Lies, homosexuality, desecrating the temple of the Lord, bringing in false worship into God's holy place, and so forth. So there's some things that are specific. So you hear the word abomination. There's specific things. In this context with Daniel, which is where I'm going, he says, Christ says, whosoever read it, let him understand. So he doesn't explain to you. So this is one of those things where Christ is like sending you and I to do Bible study. Because we have to do the Bible study now, because he don't tell you, he just says, he that readeth, let him understand. So he don't tell you, he's not giving you a Bible study here of what is the abomination of desolation, why Daniel says this, what is going on. You now have to go back to the Bible, go to Daniel, then go to the story of Babylon, then go to the story of Babel, then go to the story of Sodom, then go to all these stories to get the concept of what is he talking about. Because he don't tell you, just say you need to understand it. You're reading this, let him read, understand. So what are you understanding? What I'm understanding is this. It's a similar topic. When you see the abomination set up, we know this is primarily talking about the rejection of Christ and the desecration of the temple. in the instance with the Jews. But also, this is talking about the end of the earth with the mark of the beast. But this is talking about also the setup of the Catholic Church. There's many instances through the Bible where it become ikibab, which is the glory has departed, and abomination is in where it's not supposed to be, when it stands where it's not supposed to. When you see this, you know that trouble is nigh. Trouble from wars, famine, pestilence, trouble from God, and so forth. So he said, when you understand this, you need to get out. So I would apply this in a similar sense when it comes on to where you lay your head. When you see the wickedness gets to a certain point, as in the story of Sodom, as in the story of Babylon, as in whatever story, you understand that trouble is coming. So this is why I say, I don't believe that when you're in an environment where things get to a certain point, now somebody might say, Lloyd, what is an abomination to you might be comfortable to me. I get that. But I'm just saying from my understanding of life and Bible, when the wicked people overrun, say, the police station, I'm getting out. That's what I'm saying. To me, if I see prostitutes on the side of the street, I'm out. I know this society, that society is abomination has taken over. That's how I'm understanding this. I applied practical and applied in the sense of religiosity. Because remember, Sodom, it was not so much overrun by, say, worship. Worship wasn't the focus per se there. You could try to stretch it, and I'm sure I can, but it would be probably a stretch. The focus in Sodom was that the Sodomites were so aggressive that even the children were rapists. Lot should have gotten out. He knew. Lot says, don't do this so. He knew what he was in the courtyard waiting for strangers to protect them because these men would rape strangers. So when you're in an environment and you see certain things, for me, these are the criteria I look for. When I start hearing about people getting hit by stray bullets, I say that's not a living era. That's the abomination of desolation. It's desolate. Remember, when you go to a town and you see bombed out buildings, crack houses, people selling drugs on the street, prostitutes walking, homeless people, basically all over the place, that tells you. So many people will say, Lord, I see that in Detroit or I see that in Camden. Sure, I've seen it. But it's also in West Virginia, Tennessee, and certain places. When the place get taken over and the police is overrun, to me, that's the biggest sign. One of the biggest signs. If the police gets overrun and they themselves start selling drugs, as an example, they catch some police in Miami, about 9 of them selling drugs. When they start selling drugs and they become the drug dealers, I'm out. Not, I mean, I'm not going to go to Miami for vacation, but I go to certain locations and I try not to go to I can recognize a hood real quick. And if I see the hood is become the town, I don't need to be there. And somebody will say, Lord, I can apply that to wherever. Well, look what happened in some places in Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Tennessee and Mississippi and Alabama. And I could go in South Carolina, North Carolina. Some of these places, they've gotten overrun. And it seemed like the mayor and the police and everybody there in on the take. It's not for me to live. Somebody could say, but what if it's rural? Not for me to live. And I'm telling you, don't live in those areas. The abomination of desolation, sure, it can be. I will show you in these few next texts and these few last minutes I have with you here, that the abomination of desolation could be viewed in the sense of religion, and then God's going to punish. That's when we understand the mark of the beast. But by the time we get to the mark of the beast, trust me, it's going to be a cesspool. Because society is moving away from God, and the more the society move away from God, it's more become abominable. But I can show you in zones, not say a whole country, but in zones, in areas. I've grew up, and when I was young, I know areas that, listen, you can't even go in the daytime, much less at night. Forget about it. You get shot, you get robbed. As Christians, you move out of those areas. You have to, if you're preaching and your preaching failed, then you need to know, say, listen, my preaching failed, I'm out. And that's what happened to Sodom. Lot was a righteous man, but even his family, at least Noah had his family. Lot lost his family, lost everybody. Right? And so if you're in a zone, and as I say, number one, the police is overrun. The police getting shot, and they're overrun. And the prostitutes have overrun the place. The drug dealers have overrun the place. The drug users have overrun the place. The place, look, you're seeing bombed out houses. That means it's desolate. bombed down houses, burnt down houses, crack houses. That's the abomination of desolation set up. Somebody say, Lord, but it had nothing to do with worship. We're the church. We're the church members. We're the righteous. You see? Because somebody could say it had nothing to do with that, Lord, but you described it here, it has nothing to do with church. What do you mean it had nothing to do with church? We're the church. We're the church members. You're talking to somebody that I've been to, like I remember I've been to North Philly a few times. And I went to one of the church there, and I was invited. I went, me and some people. We went and we sat, and I think it was hour and something into the singing, the praise. Remember, North Philly is one of the most. You can see videos of North Philly. I think it's a movie. It's the crack and the flacker and the trank and the meth and stuff as over in that place. Drug users on the street, prostitutes, whore, all that kind of stuff like that. Gang banging, all that stuff. Black and white, it doesn't matter. And I went to that church this years ago. And after about an hour and something of the noise and people getting the spirit and jumping up and down, I just like, man, I gotta leave. I'm out. And I left. Whatever I was there to do, I couldn't do it. There's no weakness. They're just in the spirit. So you walk outside the church and you see the drug epidemic. And you walk inside the church and I see the drug epidemic. They're on different drugs. So it's in my mind. So I'm just trying to explain my process here. In my mind, I see it as the same thing. And I've been to areas, been on the streets, doing door to door, whatever, witnessing. And you're in areas and your life is at threat. And you're supposed to be preaching the Bible. As I say, I remember I was at an area and it was getting close to sunset. And this nice lady came up to me and my friend and he said, I think you guys need to leave. It's getting dark. And I'm like, oh, the nice lady tell us to leave, and we left. We get in our car and we left. You can't even witness at night, right? But there's people need witnessing. So don't, somebody could say to me, oh, Lord, that's just not to do with the Bible. The Bible is about religion. When religion failed, this is what happened. Lot failed and it became Ichabod. It became the glorious, the fourth party. So if you're in an environment and you see this, you got to get out. It's not good for your family. Unless you're one of the warriors, like you're one of the people doing drugs and stuff like that, then that's your location. But it's not for the righteous. Can you witness? Yeah, probably go in the daytime, probably do a soup kitchen, do whatever. You have to do some stuff, but at night, you're out of there, right? Because you're trying to witness, you're not trying to get killed. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel now, let's see if I can get to this. You need to read and you need to understand. So I'm broadening for you because I'm showing you when the church fail, what comes next is abomination. Remember, I say this again, just to show you how much I can go on for hours on this. Look at the places that have the drug epidemic and look, that's where Adventism was closing churches. I'm going to repeat again. You can almost look at the map and you can see where the churches were being closed. And you can see where there's high rates of suicide, high rates of anxiety, high rates of depression, and high rates of drugs and overdose and killing and shooting and devastation. And you can see where the church was closing. So it's not just, we were closing churches. We're closing churches in the area, again, in the Midwest, in the southern states. And what it is, as the church was losing members, so the society was losing kids to drugs. Somebody say, it's just a coincidence. Really? No, when the church fails, the society fails. Because morality is the key that holds the society together. In my mind, it's not the police. People say, it's the police and soldiers. Really? I don't believe that. I believe it's morality that holds society together. When a society becomes immoral, it becomes desolation. So hopefully I get that text broadened for you. So you don't look at it as just, worship. Because we normally would just look at it, because Sodom was not worship. It was they lose their moral compass. But Lot failed. All right, so we can keep going. You could relate back to me on this and tell me, you see, so I can sharpen my mind in this understanding. But that's what I've been observing over the years in America, in Jamaica, and I've seen it in both environments. When the church fails, the society fails. So notice verse 16. Then let them which is in Judea flee into the mountains. So it says, when you see the abomination set up, don't think that says it's going to be a good time. Think it's time to flee. You need to get out. So I'm telling you, when you see certain environments in certain communities, you don't need to live there. You need to get out. Let him which is in the housetop, on the housetop, not come down to take anything out of the house. And neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. So notice, I've heard that they were reporting in the news that the maternity ward in the hospitals in Gaza is filled with a lot of baby on intubator, or not intubator, I'm saying it wrong. The thing that they keep babies on when they're preemie babies. And I was told that the reason why they have so much of those babies because they have to be cutting the babies out of the dead mothers that are being bombed in by the Israeli bombs. So this is what's happening. So Christ is right. When you see an environment is surrounded by military, you have to get out. Now, somebody said, Lord, they can't get out because they're blocked by Egypt in one side and they're blocked by Jews in one side. So they corral them and then start bombing them. This is what makes sense. This is what I think with the Jews. Unless you're half asleep. This is the intention of the Jews. This is not collective punishment. This is punishment. This is what they do. It's just going to be wiped. I believe that from day one. This is God murdering them. For what happened with that massacre a few weeks ago. So, and lead and let him return back to take his clothes, and woe unto them that with child, and to them that give suck at the in those days. You can see this is like right now going on in Gaza. It's just you can't even get water. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, which is terrible to flee, neither on the Sabbath. For then shall great tribulation, such as not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. And except those days shall be shortened, there shall no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So when we look at this has happened throughout history a few times. And what that means is that when you're surrounded, you're in an environment where you're surrounded, it's not good. I don't want to be in an environment that it's easy for things to fall apart for me because it's already fallen apart. Because think about it, whenever there's an economic downturn, guess who get hit first? Those war zones. Because they're already on the margins. A lot of drugs, a lot of prostitutes, a lot of gangbangers, a lot of drug dealers. So if things go bad, they go bad first because they're already on the margins. And there's more I could say, so I keep going. Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 6 through 7. No, Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 6 through 9. And it says, flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. Be not cut off in her iniquity. For this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. So one of the things I believe in this life and I've observed is that when you're in a zone that is a war zone, and when I say war zone, I'm primarily not thinking about what's going on with wars like in Ukraine and stuff like that. When that war started in Ukraine, I would have get out because I know it wasn't going to go good for the Ukrainians. But when you're in a zone and it's a war zone, I'm talking about more like in a city where the whole zone is a mess. You don't want to be in that environment because when you're in that environment, the police are shooting people and the gangbangers and the bad people are shooting people. There's just too much risk of you being, say, pulled over for the wrong reason, so forth and so on. The police are in an environment where they're jumpy. The bad people are in an environment where they're jumpy. They're afraid you probably knock at somebody's door and probably knock the wrong door and they thought it was the police. And next thing you know, they saw shooting and they shot you. That's when you're in a certain zone. So when you get into a certain zone, your risk is increased. So to me, that's the thing where you go into a literal now war zone. Your risk are increased of dying. So it's, as I say, we know in a perfect world, but you want to decrease your risk of that. That to me is what it is. Everything we do, whether it be our diet, our lifestyle, everything we do is to increase our chances of success and decrease our chances of failure. Yes, we know a world where we're going to die in one day, but as I say, I don't want to hasten my death, number one, and I don't want to increase my chance of feeling pain and suffering and strange diseases. That's what we do here. It's just why we're alive, how we can have the best experience. That's all. So notice here, you don't want to be surrounded in Babylon. You want to be able to flee out of it. You don't want to get cut off because she's going to get cut off. Babylon had been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunken, and the nations are drunken of our wine. Therefore, the nations are mad. So notice here, Babylon was a golden cup in God's hand. Babylon was the country that shielded Daniel and the three Hebrew boys and other Jews. But yet Babylon Is the Lord is saying, no, get out of Babylon. So how are we fleeing from Babylon? I think Babylon is good. So this is where I think we can get that confusion that, as I say, Abraham didn't have that confusion. Abraham just know I live among crazy people. And every country I go to witness the crazy people. And God can use even the secular environment to bless. Because remember, God used Babylon to bless Daniel. But is Babylon great? No, he said Babylon is causing people to be drunk by her falsehood. Notice here, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How howl for her, take balm for her pain. If so be, she may be healed. Did he heal? No, but God used it. It's a confusion, people have dealt with me with this thing, and I'm like, I don't really understand fully. God will use a nation to bless His people. When the Christians or the Catholic Church was persecuting the Christians, the real Christians, they had to flee to the Muslim. But if you listen to Christians, they'll talk bad about Muslims. But whenever God's people were being persecuted in the Dark Ages, they had to flee to the Muslim lands. Is the Muslim lands God's people? Not really. But did the God's people flee there? Yeah, and got protected. These are confusing situations that we deal with in this life. But that's how God works. Babylon was a corrupt nation, so to speak, but God's people were fled to Babylon and taken captive to Babylon because God's people got worse than Babylon. The Bible said God's people got worse than Sodom. God's people got worse than Sodom, the Sodomites. Just think about that. And then God took His people and put them to Babylon. I mean, that's how God does His thing. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go everyone into his own country. For our judgment reach unto heaven, similar to Sodom, and is lifted up even to the skies. We find that this text here in Jeremiah, you can almost not read Revelation 18, which by God's grace I'm going to read before we close, and not read Jeremiah chapter 5, 51, verse 6 through 9, because it's almost a copy of Revelation 18. John, the Revelator, is copying Jeremiah. So when Christ says, Daniel talk about this abomination that caused it desolation. I'm not going to read it today, but it's in Daniel, like chapter 9. He's saying you have to study Daniel. But if you study Daniel, what you realize real quickly, you have to study Jeremiah, because you can't really understand what Daniel is talking about unless you understand this text and other texts in Jeremiah. Complex. So Christ is saying you have to understand. Why? And even for me here trying to tell you in a few minutes, it's a very complex topic. But I'm just saying to you in the best way I can explain it in an hour. When you see the abomination of desolation, you have to get out. Why does God people go certain places? Because they're prosperous. Sodom was a prosperous country, and Lot went there. Abraham was living near there, but he didn't live in there. I'm sure he did business with them. He traded with them. But the end result is that the corruption got too much, and God said, flee out of her. Lot fled. Sodom got destroyed. Daniel left Babylon, got saved basically by the Persians, and Babylon got destroyed. It's the world we live in. God turn and overturn. It's very complex, but it's very simple. Daniel chapter 8, verse 1. It says, in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after which appeared unto me at the first. So he got a vision at first. I was going through, do I do this? Do I do it? And I said, I'm just going to read this text and I have to explain this. So he gets another vision, then he gets this vision. He's getting the vision into Belshazzar's reign. Belshazzar is going to be the king that do the abomination of desolation, the abomination that caused desolation, which he's going to drink with his wives and his concubines and a party out of the cup. He drinks out of the cup and it gets taken up. Babylon gets taken out. Who does it get taken up? By the Medes and the Persians. Primarily, we call them the Persians today, which is the Iranian. They're the east, the country east of Babylon or Iraq. There is where Noah, Abraham, ultimately we understand is from. The province of Elan in Shusha or Shusha. If you look at the map, you see it's east of Babylon, east of Iraq. Today we talk about the Persians and the Iranians. That's where Noah literally. That's where this is where we're reading. This is geographical location of where we're reading. If you get that. So this is important to us prophetically and current events. So what's happening? He said, I saw a vision and it came up, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace. If you look at the map where Shushan is, it's on the western side of Iran. It's in the province of let's keep reading. Which is in the province of Elam, which if my memory serves me right, this is where I think Noah come from and Abram. He was called from in some in that area. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. So you can look at the river, you can see it today on the map. And it's a historical site that people go and visit. Probably one day we'll get to go and visit me and you. And then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the rams. It'd be nice to go visit them. Ask them, where was Daniel when he saw this vision? Literally, it would be fascinating for me just to see it for myself. I'd say, wow. And he saw a ram that had two horns, because there was the Medes and the Persians, and it was coming up against the Babylonians. And two horns were high, and one was higher than the other. The Persians were higher than the Medes, I think, or is it the other way around? And the higher one came up first. And I saw the ram push westward. So you can see on the map, because if Iran is the east of Babylon, then geographically it's pushing west. And northward, if you look at the map again, you will see why it's pushing east and westward and eastward. Sorry, westward and northward. And he pushed southward. And so that no beast, plural, might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will and became great. And that's the history of the kingdom, as you know, went from Egypt to Israel, and then from Israel under Solomon to Babylon, and then Babylon to the Medes and the Persians, and then from there to the Greece, and then the Romans. And we currently live under the Roman Empire, which is included Western Europe and America. That's the history of the world in a quick sweep, in a few seconds. So notice here, this is where now we get the concept of come out of Babylon, predicted by Jeremiah. This is where we get the concept of the abomination of the abomination of desolation. And while the abomination of desolation was going on, the Iranians were on the doorsteps of Babylon, literally banging it down to get in to start chopping off heads. But it just so happened that Daniel himself was familiar with what was going to happen, and he himself got spared because he was the prophet of the Most High God. And then he finds himself now in the other dominant kingdom. Is he reckoned amongst them? No. Does he live amongst them? Yes. Was his life at risk at time because of the Babylonians, and then ultimately because of the Iranians? Yes. But it doesn't mean that he's part of them. In this world, we live in a world of sin. Yes, we live in a world that trouble is happening, but the Lord says we're not supposed to be part of them or reckon amongst them. We just live amongst them. Abraham lived amongst them. A lot lived amongst them. Lot got messed up. Lot started becoming like them. Well, his children start becoming like them. And ultimately, he probably didn't know, but his wife was like them. We don't want to do that. We want to be able to be amongst them, but not be part of them. So for Revelation 18, I'm going to read it now for the echo as we close here. And notice the echo now of Jeremiah and this concept here with Babylon, with Daniel. Which I say we would have to read too much text to give you the context, but I say you have to understand that. Revelation 18, verse 1 onward. And after these things I saw the angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is fallen. That means a second fall. And it's become the habitation of the devils and the hole of every foul spirit and the cage of every unclean bird, hateful bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy. And I heard another voice from heaven, saying, Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins. This will bring us allusions to Sodom, Babylon, so forth. And that you receive not of her plagues, because punishment is coming. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquity. Reward her as she has rewarded thee double, according to her works. In the cup that she hath filled, fill her double. How much she have glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she said in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore her plague shall come in one day, death, mourning, and famine, and she shall be utterly burnt with fire, for strong is the Lord which judgeth her. So my advice to you is that, yes, we're in a world of sin, but when you're choosing where you're going to live, where you're going to put your head, where you're going to put your family. Choose carefully. Don't be cheap. As I said, the cheapest thing you can buy for housing in this world is a casket. Choose carefully where you live, and make sure that you live in a place that you can afford and all that, but your budget can take. But don't skimp on housing. Don't skimp on your location. You always choose, as I said, the best diet, the best lifestyle, the best church, the best thing you can to give yourself the best advantage on this world. That's all we can do in this world. And until then, we wait for the coming of the Lord. But until then, we try to make the best of what we have and where we have and where we live. That's my message for you today. Let us pray. Our Father who art in heaven, I thank you for your word. And this day, I pray the Lord, you may bless us in our day-to-day choices, that we might choose best for ourselves and for our family, and that we might live and not die. This is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow. We should talk about wisdom for living. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.